what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it.
We were talking with our guy Bill Bender earlier about all the things going on right now in college athletics, and now pay for play is here. So one question, because I do want to get to some actual on-the-field stuff. Any surprise from you? I mean, we've known this was going to happen, maybe faster than we thought, but any surprise now what happened yesterday? Pay for play is now here?
Yeah, I think you hit on it right there, just how fast this all happened. I felt like we were talking about, oh, yeah, this will be the plan, a few years from now, and I think we were kind of looking at it latter half of the decade, and for this to really get rolling that quickly where now, the door is open for this to actually happen in a new era of college athletics is here. I mean, it is a landmark occasion to have revenue sharing. It feels obvious. It's just, what is it all going to look like? Does this actually benefit the group of five in any way, or are they going to be at more of a disadvantage? I think that's kind of the questions we have moving forward. But revenue sharing always made the most sense to me because, the reason why people like myself have done a 180 on pairs being played is because of these TV contracts. And if you have these TV contracts that are now so insane compared to what they were a decade ago, yeah, it makes sense that a cut for players would come from that. So, yeah, I think it's just a very new world of college sports that we're living in.
It is, and we hadn't even really gotten into what this could do for the group of five. And obviously, here in the state of Louisiana, we're going to talk LSU, and we're in Baton Rouge, but, with Tulane and Louisiana Lafayette and Louisiana Tech, certainly something that is going to affect some of our listeners because I can't imagine the G5 now is going to be able to keep any of their players when they can't offer the millions of dollars that the Power Four is going to be able to offer.
Yeah, I mean, look at somebody like Chris Brazzell II going from Tulane over to Tennessee. And I understand, you have a coaching change. That types of things like that happen in this day and age of the portal. But, yeah, that climb is going to be even more difficult to be able to keep some of these guys on board. And it's difficult. I know college basketball has dealt with this in a more extreme way than college football. And it just, if you're one of those programs at this stage of the game, you just appreciate any sort of time you have with those guys. Maybe you're in a situation where, your guy goes straight from that group of five program to the NFL and you just enjoy that for what it is. But yeah, it's brutal. I mean, it's a widening gap. And I think you see the playoff number two where those schools are getting $1.5 million per school. And now it's going to be up to a whopping $1.8 million per school with this new playoff contract, which, I don't even think that covers the price of inflation. I mean, goodness gracious. So it's a tough time right now to be in the group of five.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I'm just thinking of players. I mean, first one, like Tajay Spears was the first guy that popped into my mind. I mean, you and I have talked about him. You know how much I appreciate his game. And I have a Tulane helmet right in front of me right now here on set. And Tajay Spears doesn't play or finish his career at Tulane anymore. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they don't have that option basically because, the things that you're going to have available to you now in the Power Four compared to Group of Five, it's just going to be almost impossible to say no to that. So I do want to get into some on-the-field discussion with you, Connor. You and I were catching up yesterday on Off Campus. I know you're a big fan of what Tennessee is potentially going to do this year on offense. Before we get to maybe the Tennessee conversation, where would you put them in a group of teams? Would you put them in the top 4, top 5, top 6 of the SEC?
They're one of 8 SEC teams that has 12-team playoff upside.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think the way that you should approach this if you're a Tennessee fan is, look, going 9-3, going 10-2, that's on the table for this team. And I got questions on what it's going to look like on the back end, that secondary that lost a lot of pieces in the portal. There are some questions as to what that's going to look like, but you return maybe the best defensive player in the conference, one of the best in all of college football, and James Pierce Jr., who just exploded last year as an edge rusher, getting more snaps. And, offensively, I just love so many of the pieces that they have coming back in the pass catching room. I think the running back, Dylan Sampson, is going to be an absolute stud replacing Jalen Wright. And I look forward to seeing what Nico Iamaleava is going to be able to do for a Tennessee offense that, look, Josh Heupel had nothing but top 8 offenses up until last year, 5 consecutive top 8 offenses. I think they can get back to that. So, yeah, the schedule is difficult, but 10-3 does Tennessee have the ability to go like 9-3, 10-2? Yes, absolutely. It's just a matter of whether or not they can win one of those games that maybe they're not supposed to. Obviously, it's difficult when you still have Georgia and Alabama, but, man, I love what Tennessee has going in its favor this year.
So, Connor, if you were kind of grouping these teams together, would it be Georgia, Texas maybe in their own group, and then would you have like a second tier before you got to Tennessee? Would Tennessee be in there? Because, like here on this show, we've kind of had the conversation. It feels like Missouri, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Bama, LSU, like those 5 teams feel like they're in this group that I can't really put a pecking order on it just yet, but they feel like, kind of like you said, they've got 9-3, 10-2 kind of written all over them, and we'll just have to see how they react to, you know, the early portion of their schedule. Or would you put Tennessee maybe in a group ahead of some of those teams?
I'd probably have Tennessee in that like tier 3, because tier 1 is Georgia and Texas.
Yeah.
And then I think tier 2 is that Alabama, Ole Miss, Mizzou. And then I would say even just after that, that's like the LSU, Tennessee, Oklahoma. That's kind of the way that I see this all, you know, breaking down. And, you know, it's not to say that it'll stay like that, but, you know, we'll get a good indicator when Tennessee travels to Oklahoma for the Josh Heupel reunion in September. That's Oklahoma's SEC debut, a game that I'm really looking forward to. I would expect College Game Day to be there as well. But we'll get some sort of separation. It's difficult, though, because if you look at Oklahoma's regular season over-under, 7.5 wins, you would say they don't belong in that tier, in that conversation. I think that's more because the schedule is the second most difficult in the conference outside of Florida's, but their roster is not a 7-8 win roster. It's like a 10-win roster, but it's just so difficult when you have, I think they have like 6 games against teams that won at least 9 games last year. I mean, that is absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's difficult to kind of look at it preseason, but there's a lot going in the SEC's favor. Could have a whole bunch of teams in that top 10, top 15 range.
All right, Connor, let's talk about the LSU Tigers. Let's talk about Garrett Nussmeier. I know you and I have talked about Nuss for a very, very long time. He is a quarterback that it is unique in the fact that everybody knows who he is, but he has one start. And when he's been out there, he's actually played really well. He comes in for Max Johnson against Arkansas, wins that game, SEC championship game, second half, does really well against an historic Georgia defense, bowl game last year. What are you expecting from Garrett Nussmeier? And, you know, is there enough weapons around him maybe to be able to, you know, fill his full potential?
I like the weapons. I like Kyron Lacey. I like C.J. Daniels coming over from Liberty. You have a situation on the offensive line that's as good as you can ask for. I mean, to have Will Campbell on one side, Emory Jones on the other. I mean, you just don't get that type of protection. And for a guy that isn't going to move the way that Jaden Daniels did, obviously, that's such a huge plus working in his favor. I think it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like in this shift of play calling. And, yeah, I think there's always optimism when a team keeps it internal with the play calling. I mean, that was the conversation last year with Georgia. That's kind of the conversation this year with Oklahoma. Like, when you kind of make that transition, it's not as daunting of like an outsider coming in and, oh, they're going to overhaul the system, a la Dan Enos at Arkansas last year, which was just a total failure. So I think that Garrett Nussmeier has the ability to be one of the best quarterbacks in this conference and has all SEC type upside. It's, can he cut down on those mistakes? Because he's played so fearless throughout the majority of his career. I actually thought the first half of that bowl game was a great indicator that, oh man, maybe he actually is figuring out some of these skills to be able to manage a game and cut down on some of those turnovers. You still need those gunslinger tendencies in him, especially if the defense is not going to be some top 20 unit. But I'm optimistic that Garrett Nussmeier can be everything that LSU fans hope he can be. It's just going to be whether or not he can cut down on those mistakes, and if that play calling, if he's on the same page throughout this entire season, or if there's more of a learning curve to start off in September.
LSU make a 12-team playoff as we sit here at the end of May. I mean, we're not that far away from the college football season, less than 100 days, Connor. So, I mean, we might as well put predictions out there, right?
I know. I think so. And I don't want to be too locked into that. I'm sure we'll talk about it, and maybe I'll go probably back and forth 50 different times on off campus. But, I find myself buying into this version of LSU, even though we have so many questions about the defense and what it's going to look like with Blake Baker. But I do find myself defaulting to Brian Kelly having the longest active streak of 10-win seasons in this sport.
Yeah.
And that's something that I look at and I say, all right, man, his floor is so unbelievably high. It's higher than people realize. And then I close my eyes and picture if I take that opinion into that Sunday night game against USC, because I can envision this world in which a Lincoln Riley offense with Miller Moss at quarterback is just dicing up this LSU defense. And I'm like, why did I predict LSU to go into the 12-team playoff? I knew they hadn't won a season opening game in the 2020s. Right. I'm an idiot. So I'm very much on the fence. I would probably say I'm like 60% yes, 40% no. But I don't know. Ask me in a week and they'll change.
That is completely fair. Completely fair with the way LSU has not shown up in openers in the last 4 years for you to maybe have those feelings because, well, it's not too far off how T-Bob and I feel as well. Connor, you're the man. I appreciate you joining me back-to-back days, and I always look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, man.
Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, good enough to join us here on OTB.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.